So yet again, we're back for another In Conversation. And of course, it is the legends in conversation. The second legend that Super League Raw is going to interview is none other than Huddersfield Giant, Cowbell Army's legend, Mr. Eorl Crabtree. Earl, thank you very much indeed for joining us on Super League Raw.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you for asking me to come along.
It's not at all, not at all. Thank you for coming on. Right, okay. Before we start, just out of interest, when you introduce yourself as Eorl Crabtree, do people think you're an Earl who don't know you?
You'd be surprised, actually. I think most people either think I'm an Earl of somewhere, which I am the Earl of Huddersfield, let's be honest. But the issue is actually more rise around my name, the way it's spelled, because it's E-O-R-L.
Yeah.
And everyone's either calling me Errol or Eorl, which is what Thierry Alibert used to call me, Eorl. And, these sort of things cropped up all the time. And so much so that anyone who's got hands-free on the car, the Bluetooth, you can't ask for ring Eorl Crabtree or phone Eorl Crabtree. It has to be Eorl or something along those lines, because it doesn't understand the name as it's spelt like that. So it catches people out all the time.
So how many? So what we're basically saying is everybody's phone you were spelt conventionally for Bluetooth. Fair play, fair play. Right, okay. Let's get to know Earl a little bit better. Right, a couple of quick fire questions just to settle you in. What's your favourite film, Earl?
Dad, I'm going to go with Full Metal Jacket.
Oh, mate, probably 15 minutes. 15 minutes of the greatest drill sergeant ever. He was a real drill sergeant as well, wasn't he?
Allegedly so, yeah.
Yeah, he was, yeah.
I like my history, to be honest with you. So anything to do with wars and stuff like that, I find fascinating. Band of Brothers is my favourite series. I know you haven't just asked me that, but my favourite series is that. So anything to do with that sort of era is right up my street. I find it fascinating, and to see what those people went through is incredible. So yeah, that really, it sort of triggers me in a lot of ways. I think it's fascinating, but also scary at the same time, especially what we're all going through in the world right now. It's
Absolutely. Well, when I come over the hill to visit Joel, I like the American. For some reason, the American Civil War is the one that's always fascinated me. So maybe we'll have a coffee and talk American Civil War.
Anytime.
Favorite song, girl? Your favorite song?
Bohemian Rhapsody has to be.
Tune. Multiple number ones, of course, for that one, and the Christmas one to boot. 3 words that best describe Eorl Crabtree.
Oh God, this is a little bit more difficult. So either quick fire, chilled, sort of nice and friendly. That's just me.
Superb.
Wait, sorry, I totally forgot sarcastic. I had to take one of them out. Sarcastic's got to be in there as well.
So your all-timers Band of Brothers. What are you watching at the minute on the telly?
We're just hammering Law and Order SVU at the moment. It just seems to be one of those programs to put on. It's a bit of an older one, but when you've got 25 series of it, there's plenty to go at. And my missus always has Friends on in the background as well, so we like a bit.
You get on with my wife. She loves all that stuff.
I've got one of those partners that's into those sort of murder programs and stuff, which is quite disconcerting at times, but we get into those quite regularly.
Oh well, maybe we'll both come over. The wife can watch that because she's into all that. Long we could go for a beer. Right, okay. Right, got to do it. Brown or white crab meat?
Neither, mate.
Oh,
I don't eat shellfish. Don't eat crabs. It's the family name, mate. I'm not going to eat my own kind, am I?
Fair enough. Well, you're not going to knock them down either. What's your favourite tree?
Oh, big like me.
Fair play to you. What's your favourite dance move on the dance floor at a wedding? What's your dad dancing like?
Dad dancing's pretty good, actually. I just got a bit more of I won't say a robot, but something of that sort of nature, but more accidentally than on purpose, I'd say.
Oh, imagine that, dance off you and Peter Crouch. That'd be interesting. You'd have to win it for the Rugby League family, wouldn't you? You couldn't let him beat you.
I'd take him down, mate.
Well, if not on the dance floor, in other ways. Right, what was your favourite away ground to play at as a player?
Favourite away ground for probably different reasons. I was very lucky that I played at quite a lot of them, and I always found going to Hull FC was my favourite away ground simply because the changing rooms were massive, the food was good after, and the crowd was always quite good. But bearing in mind, I've also played at some shockers as well. The Willows, Wilderspool, when they were sort of like the back end of when they were just about to shut down and places like that. Castleford has always been a tough place to go, just because the fans are great around the pitch and all that sort of stuff, and they're really hostile. And I love that side of the game. But the changing rooms, you could barely move. And at Castleford, there weren't really so much showers, but like a pipe with holes in it above your head. It was created quite hostile. But I say Knowlesy Road as well. They had a pink changing room, which they'd obviously painted on purpose. So I played at some of the older grounds, like the Boulevard as well, where you went through a cage to get onto the field. So I've got fond memories of playing away games. But I think the one for the nicest place to go probably was going to Hull FC. Just you actually felt you were getting looked after a little bit more, which was unusual. So hostile grounds are totally different. Boulevard, Wakefield, Castleford especially, because you're about 2 meters away from the fans. But I always had a good rapport with the fans. Got a lot of abuse, but I absolutely love that side of the game. So yeah, it was fond memories of that.
Yeah, I mean, your career goal stems from the transition from those grounds to the more modern games, the modern grounds, doesn't it? I mean, on the note of hostile atmosphere, KR are doing a good job on that, aren't they, at Craven Park at the moment, in terms of generating a good hostile atmosphere?
Fantastic, like genuinely. So I'm a rugby league fan. I don't particularly hate any teams or anything like that. I respect them all, and I was very lucky in my testimonial. We played against Hull KR, so I've obviously got a soft spot for them. But what they're doing off the field as much as anything else, and creating this sort of great atmosphere and filling the stand up and getting the sort of like a festival feel behind the sticks with all the stalls and stuff like that. I just think they do some really, really good stuff. And I personally believe when you get that sort of environment, people want to be a part of it. It's that fear of missing out. So they attract more fans to come along. And when they're playing good rugby league as well, it's only going to set them up moving forward. It's great what they're doing at the moment. So yeah, exciting times.
Absolutely, and we need these type of things in our sport to grow it, which is fantastic. Right, who was your rugby league hero as growing up?
I didn't really have many heroes, and this has just been me being honest. I never really particularly looked up to anybody or anything like that. I'm very fortunate that my own family history, I had some good rugby players in there, including the legend that was Big Daddy, my uncle. My granddad played for Halifax in the 1930s as well, won the Challenge Cup with them. So for me, I didn't really look up to anyone, but some of the players that I watched coming up, I'm going to mention one is Carl Harrison. And I say him because I watched him growing up, but then he coached me at England when it was sort of there was Great Britain and England, and he were absolutely brilliant with me, and it's good to see his lad performing well. But one of those characters that I wasn't sure what to expect, because he's quite a tough, loud character. But when I got to meet him and I'm a bit more chilled and laid back, I really hit it off with him. He were absolutely brilliant. Put his arm around me, and I played at England for him, and I run through brick walls for him just because he managed to get me on side, and that for me meant so much. So just somebody that stood out in my mind as a great, tough player of the past. But also for me, he was instrumental in starting my England career as well.
I think what I've always found quite interesting, because as much as rugby league players are very available to fans and do a great job in community, and there is that bond. There is the odd rugby league player, without naming them, that do have a bit of a chip on the shoulder in any sport. They just don't get it in terms of who pays the wages and all the rest of it. But what I've always found is that the middle units, I've not met many middle units who have that chip. You're talking there about Carl. I mean, you're talking about Jacqueline Hyde characters on the field and off the field. Carl Harrison on the field. Adrian Morley. I met Adrian many times. Sam Burgess now. JP, yourself. All of these big middle units. You couldn't meet nicer fellas off the pitch.
Yeah, and I think for us who've sort of played at that level for that sort of length of time as well, and you're playing in the middle of the fields, you've done the hard yards, and you put your body on the line, and you're fronted up against people, and you have to be that tough guy on the pitch. And I am probably one of the softest guys you'll ever meet, just in general. But I still knew when I had to cross that white line, I still had to give it my opposition, whoever it was, and I enjoyed doing that. Didn't faze me in the slightest. But we played at that level. You played against elite athletes, the best players in the world. For me, just talking to anyone now, it's not so much a drop down, as in the sense that I don't need to prove myself as a big, tough rugby player. I've done that on the field. That's what you did as a living. That's what we did day in, day out. I can just converse with people and just have a conversation and try and relate to them as best I can. But that, you're under such a high pressure playing at that sort of level to perform. A lot of pressure on being a big bloke in the middle of the field, trying to be the toughest guy out there. So it's nice not to have to do that as well. These lads have done it. Adrian Morley, I played against him tons of times and used to shoot out the line trying to take my head off and stuff like that. And but he's a great bloke, absolutely fantastic bloke. That doesn't mean what he does in everyday life. He doesn't just run around trying to shoot out the line, trying to smash people. He had a job to do, just as I did. But beyond that, actually, I'd like to think most of us anyway are quite just decent people that do anything for anyone and want the game to thrive. So, yeah, we're still fighting the battle.
Well, you turn around and say you don't look up to anyone at your height. I suppose that's true. But on that point, though, because even though these are supposed to be quick fire, I just roll with it. There's many more quick fires coming, but I just roll with it. And somebody like yourself, especially on game day, I can imagine you can't hide. You tower above many. So these young Huddersfield fans, people who watched you, I can imagine that you do a lot of talking on match day because a lot of people will make a beeline for you, won't they?
No matter where I go, I thought one of my strengths was sort of standing out and being able to make big carries in games and offload, and I was a target. But I'm also a target sort of off the field, and I don't mean in a negative way. People seem to be able to approach me, talk to me, and I'll talk to anyone and give anyone the time of day. I'm a Rugby League fan, but ultimately I'm quite a sociable person as well.
Yeah.
So any ground to go to, I don't particularly get much stick. I feel like I can enter any room at any ground and talk to anybody. So and I think that's important in our sport, is that we can't afford not to be like that. Yeah. It's all inclusive.
Yeah.
And I hate where we try to, some like communal bars and stuff like that after a game where fans can actually mix together is absolutely fantastic. Obviously, this has to be controlled. But I believe the fans getting together as much as they can actually creates what we are so good at, which is a family sport that's all inclusive.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I mean, in terms of, and on that point, again, the community that we're building here at Super League Raw, Joel, for example, he's actually another member of ours and another presenter, Steph. He's actually coming on Friday to the league game. They're all mingling before games. At the semi-final, the Warrington and the Huddersfield members, they were mingling. It's wonderful. You're absolutely spot on with regards to that. Who's the hardest player you come up against?
So this one obviously crops up quite a lot of times, and there's the obvious ones like JP and Adrian Morley, and these are tough players, very tough players. A couple that stand out for me more so, probably Kieran Cunningham, who was horrible to play against. Jimmy Lowes in the middle of the field when it was very early days. I'll say the toughest player that I've ever played against, and it's not controversial because he was the best player in the world at one point, and for some reason I think people forget about that, was Stuart Fielder. He was made of granite, that guy. He was the toughest blokes I've ever met, most athletic, strongest blokes I've ever met. And when he played at Huddersfield, I could see why. He was just so intense the way he trained. When he was at Bradford, he was unstoppable, that bloke. And for me, when I played against him as a 20-year-old, 21-year-old, walking out against that Bradford team of the early 2000s with Leslie Vainicolo on one wing and Tavita Vaikona on the other, and Joe Vangenaar and Paul Anderson in the middle, Stuart Fielder was right there mixing it up with the best in the world and was the best prop in the world at that point. So for me, him by a long way in many ways, just because of how intense he was and trying to just be the best. And it was, it was a scary sight, especially in your early 20s.
So going on then, who's the best player that you've ever played with?
I played with some good players and some that stand out, like Brett Hodgson. Obviously, was brilliant. State of Origin, man of steel for us. And one I'm going to say is just a local mate of mine is Danny Brough. There's no one quite like him. Man of steel for the Giants. He became an England international very briefly. Scottish captain, a character. And we talk about different players and having that sort of different mindset and sometimes the ill discipline. Broughy had that in him as well, but what he had is some genius, and there was that fine line that he walked from genius and insanity. And he stepped over it sometimes. But I've never seen anyone do what he does or did in games. He just creates something out of absolutely nothing. But one of the toughest competitors you would ever meet in your life.
Danny Brough, he terrorised teams, absolutely terrorised teams. On his day, unplayable. unplayable. So that's a great shout. Right, describe these colleagues then in one word. I've picked out some players that you've had the privilege to play alongside, both internationally and at Huddersfield. So in one word, describe these players. Brett Hodgson.
Just superstar.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Michael Lawrence.
Workhorse.
Jake Connor.
Temperamental.
We'll come back to him. Brett Ferris.
Tough.
Good player in money. You know, one of those unsungers. He just 9 out of 10, wasn't he?
I don't particularly want to get into the personal sort of stuff, but Brett Ferris for us when he when we were playing really good rugby at the time, he was instrumental in that. Outstanding, very tough player, skillful as well. Got into the England side, and unfortunately, it kind of things went pear shaped a little bit. But that's life. He's kicked on and went to Leeds and moved on and stuff like that. So good on him. And you wish all these people well in their lives. But it was a shame at that time we couldn't keep it all together and keep moving forward. So I think a bit of a lost opportunity there. But Brett was, some player.
He was some player. James Roby.
Legend.
Yeah. Sam Burgess.
Sam Burgess. I'm trying to think of one word that sums Sam Burgess up, but revolutionary. He changed the way we probably looked at English rugby players by doing what he did in Australia.
I played more so than Morley, yeah?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Morley was like he started it. Yeah. But the way that Sam Burgess took it to another level, and his family and Russell Crowe, they created that sort of almost like a marketing piece as well. Morley went out there to prove that English guys could do it. I think Sam Burgess went out to almost kick that on to say, we're not here just to make it. We're going to be here and totally stand out and bring a load of our mates across with us. And I think since him going and a few others, we've just got more and more players now going to Australia and proving themselves. In fact, so much that they're now going, hang on a second. Well, they've got some decent players. Let's see who we can pick up. Problem is, they pick them up for cheap, knowing that they can do. Take them back over there, and they give them a great life and a great career and a lot of money. Fortunately, it takes them out of our pocket to a certain degree, out of our game, which is a shame and something that we probably need to look at how we stop that happening. But also, if we can do the same in reverse. So.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And of course, his brother comes to you next year. How excited are you that Tom's coming across to the Giants?
I won't say I'm particularly excited, and this is no slight at him. He's unbelievable. What a player to be able to get into your team. I don't worry. I don't worry about him. He'd be absolutely brilliant for us and just what we need. But I think we need also more than that as well. I want Tom to be able to come over here and put his best foot forward and take us to another level. But I think he needs the right people around him playing good rugby league for him to be able to do that as well. I don't want him to come over, believing that we are where we should be when we're not. He needs to come over, get into a good team and play well.
Yeah, I mean, but obviously there is the bit that when you do land a Tom Burgess, it does give a bit of profile in terms of attracting other players who would want to play alongside him. So it can go the other way, can't it? He can actually be a bit of a linchpin for attracting other people to come along.
You can attract players to come along, but you've got to perform. And I don't mean him as an individual, I mean the team. And at the moment, it's quite clear to see that we're not playing where we want to where we want to be. But if we were playing where we want to be and a bit higher up and playing some good rugby week in, week out, I think he just fits in and he takes you to another level, without a doubt. He's sensational for us. But you can't be reliant on just him coming in and changing the team. You need to be in a well-structured team that's playing pretty well to be able to kick on again. I've seen it before when good players come in and then other players leave. You can't just do that. Doesn't change anything. A player coming in doesn't change anything.
No.
It needs to be a well-versed team that is actually playing some good rugby league. And if we are doing that, he fits in. He takes us to another level. Yes, you may be able to help attract more players. Sponsorships, that's great for me because that's what I do now. It's fantastic for the Giants. But we need to be thinking higher up anyway. We're not where we want to be at the moment.
No, well, on that topic, describe Leroy Cudjoe in a word.
Stalwart. I think it's hard. There's so many words you could use for Leroy. What an absolute bloke he is. He's just an ultimate professional, legend of our game anyway, and somebody who should be recognised for that. There's a few
100%.
players that we've had, your Jermaine McGilvrays, Michael Lawrence, Leroy Cudjoe, all legends, all players that have played for such a long time and given towards the game. But what we recognised as well as other players will because of the club that they played for. But we need these players within the sport, players that hang around for such a long time and put the bodies on the line.
The thing is about Leroy, and again, we do team of the week, we do team of the months. And what we don't do is we don't judge it on names. You know, you see teams picked and you go, how on earth? I mean, for example, Danny Houghton, I think at London, got a point. I can't remember if it was Man of Steel or the Goalthorpe. He did 25 tackles, didn't make a meter in the game, and yet he got a point. You know, and that's the example. Whereas what we do is, regardless of if a team's won or lost, we look at the individual contribution in that position. And, you know, Cudjoe for me, over his lifetime, what a player. Can play multiple positions. He's Huddersfield through and through. I mean, he run his blood to water for that club. And I think I'm right in thinking he made our team of the month in March. I'm pretty sure he did. He's had a couple of team of the week appearances. So yeah, you're spot on. You know, we try and recognise every player in every club because, you know, there's some absolute gems all around the league, even at the teams like, for example, London. I mean, Alex Walker looks like he's going to be a player. James Meadows, Ollie Leyland, you know, these players, even though they're in a beaten side, they've got massive futures ahead of them. Back to your playing partners, Gareth Ellis.
Gareth Ellis, I'll be honest with you, I'd say, again, just professional. What he's done and the way he carried himself is how I believe most rugby players should look towards. You know, performing as, I don't mean just on the field, off the field, the way he's delivered himself. Great bloke, studies the game, nice guy, tough as teak. He's one of those. I've only ever been, I think, at England with Gareth Ellis.
England, that's right. Yeah.
But from what I've met, he's always come across as just a genuinely good, tough bloke.
Fair play. James Graham.
Jammer. You know what? I've had some good times with Jammer actually when we were on England. Got on with him really, really well. It was ace to see him kick on. Again, it's hard to find just one word for these people, but again, instrumental, I guess, in doing what he did for British Rugby League in Australia. Still is as well, still out there on these podcasts and getting fired up as he always did. And the other word I'd probably call him is angry, because I remember playing in when he just broke into the first team, was the angriest little redhead running around. And it worked for him. And he's just gone and kicked on. Great bloke as well, mate.
Don't know about you, delighted to see that he's got the Kenty spot on NRL. You know, at 360. I mean, that's just amazing. When I saw him pop up that week and he's still on there now, you're thinking, go on, James, like, go on, you tell those Aussies how it is, mate. And he's fiery on that. No, he does.
He does. That's what I mean. I've seen it a couple of times. But it again just shows where the English players, or some of them especially, are thought of in the NRL. That would never have happened, would it, in the past? Even when Morley went over, you weren't getting the English lads on them, so you wouldn't have those sort of media outlets. But now we do, because they've gone over and proved themselves. And you get the players going over, like Dom Young's gone over and absolutely killed it. What a freak he is, which is absolutely fantastic for the British sport, but probably more so for the NRL, because he's the one setting it on fire. And it's frustrating to see from our perspective, but good on him, mate. You won't ever hold him back. Go and enjoy yourself, mate.
Like Smithies.
Live the dream.
Like Smithies as well. I mean, I think nobody saw that coming at the end of last season, but he's doing incredible stuff at Canberra. He's having a real good dig at him, and again, getting respect from the Aussies, and rightly so. Sam Tompkins.
Again, he's just a bit of a freak, isn't he? He's Sam Tompkins. The way he could move on the field, the body positions got him from stepping and stuff like that. Again, ultimate competitor. Always berated the referees, but he's
a good ref.
He played the game, but he had gamesmanship, I'd say. But what he could do with the ball in hand, especially, was unlike any other player. And again, I don't know where you find one of these players. Used to bend in all sorts of different positions and lightning off the mark. Incredible player.
what's coming across is your love and passion for the game, which is marvellous. So on that topic and on the topic of Sam Tompkins, I know what my reaction was in the semi-final against Saints in Perpignan when he scored that try last year. What was yours?
Not disbelief at all, almost laughing at the fact that he just did what he did. Just like you expected it. He was always going to do that. And to have a player in your team or a player that's played for such a long time to do that in the last game and just step through and as in over there, and you're like, what? What the heck is this guy on, mate? He's an absolute freak in that sense. And you need people in the game that can light it up like he did. And I'm glad he's still in the game with the punditry because he's such a smart bloke, very knowledgeable. He's been around it a long time, played at the highest possible level, travelled the world as well doing it. Again, we need more people like him to stay in the game because the more players we have in, and I know that other teams do this with Wigan especially, bring ex-players down to be around the team and things like that. They create a culture. And I think probably this sport does lack a little bit of culture. Not every team, but I think as a whole is... we have people that probably don't buy into it as much as maybe like myself, like other players like Sam Tompkins, those types of players who are so important to galvanise the sport. Sam Burgess being a coach. I don't think there's any other teams and fans that see Sam Burgess go, what's the point in him being here? He's everything he does on the pitch with the kids at the end of the game. Watched him, I thought, do you know what? Class act. We need more of that in the sport.
Spot on. And I'm not going to apologise for this. Leroy Cudjoe was second to last because it was a toss-up as who was going to ask last. But I've kept this one last. Jermaine McGilvray.
The instant word that comes to mind is tight because he's the tightest man in rugby league. But he's known for this as well. He's absolutely known for being the tightest man in rugby league. But he's also shrewd the way he looks after his money. But I've got a lot of time for Jermaine. I was there from the beginning when he came through when he was 16 years old, and he was more of a footballer, but he was raw as anything. And he'd run in and he'd drop the ball, but he was running as hard as he could, and he just got better and better. And he had it was a tough run for him. But what he's done in the game can't ever be underestimated. The amount of times he played for Great Britain, the games he had, the tries he scored. And I think players like Jermaine get forgotten about too quickly. Just look at what he's done in the game and what he's done international-wise as well, and playing for years on the wing for England and sort of Great Britain. But yet, then he gets brushed aside without the same sort of name as what other players have had in the past. And I think he deserves probably a little bit more, not respect as such on his name, but it'd be good to keep him in the game as long as possible because I think he's inspirational to a lot of players, especially at Huddersfield. And we talk about diversity in the sport. We've had some great players come through. And we talk about Leroy Cudjoe, Michael Lawrence, Jermaine McGilvray, all Huddersfield lads. And you talk about creating sort of diversity in the sport. These set the example to absolutely anybody from any background can come and play rugby league because that's what we can do in this sport. But I could talk about Jermaine for quite a while because what he does off the field as well is good. Very smart bloke. His kids are playing football now as well. I think he's got 3 lads, a couple at Man City, 1 at Man United, and he's installing on them his beliefs of being a professional sportsman, how to live your life, being a family man, and being professional, and helping them aspire to things in their own lives, which might not be rugby league, but will take them a very long way. We need more Jermaines, honestly. It's the tightest man in rugby league.
No, mate, I've loved watching Jermaine McGilvray over the years, and I think there's an argument for maybe 2, maybe 3 seasons up there. I mean, you mentioned Dom Young for 2 maybe 3 seasons, possibly knocking on the door of one of, if not the best winger in both hemispheres. He was that good, Jermaine. So yeah, I mean, I think anybody who watched Jermaine McGilvray won't forget Jermaine McGilvray, and I think anybody who played up against him. I was speaking of Liam Marshall, and Liam Marshall said he hated playing against McGilvray. He was always open and praying that Jermaine would go inside. It was a funny moment that in his
I've been praying for the same. He was tough as anything. You just couldn't get him down, but he was like a personal battle against anybody. You see him, he did it for Wakefield at the weekend as well, and he just breaks through the middle of the field and he's just walking up the field, shrugging people off. Guy's nearly 50-year-old. Do you know what I mean? He should be doing these sort of things. He's hanging on by a thread. His bones are crumbling. His muscles are hanging off. He's just had a bicep reconstruction. The guy should not be able to play, but he's an absolute beast of a man. And he'll continue to do so. He may be a great at scoring in corners, but the carries off his own line, which helped the team. It were those, you didn't have to sprint back on side because Jermaine were taking the next carry. He's coming back to you. So it were brilliant. And yeah, brilliant player to play alongside, but top bloke as well.
Fantastic. Well, we're giving him a massive plug there. Outstanding stuff. Right, you signed, before you signed for Huddersfield in 99, where did your love for the game start? How did you get into it? And, talk to us about your amateur days.
Probably Underbank, 10 years old, and top of Own Firth, last little summer wine country, basically on the top of a mountain, absolutely freezing cold, no grass on the field. It was just cow muck and mud and water. Awful place to go and play rugby league, although it's a lot better these days. They take a little bit more care of it, but it was essentially next to a farm, so it stunk as well, and parents were on ushering cows off the field. It was sort of like, it was one of those sort of places. But for me, that's where the love started, because my dad was my first ever coach up there, another lad, Stuart Garlick, so they were my first coaches. I was there with just friends that either from school or other lads that I met because they were part of the under-8s, under-9s team. And that's where I started to make friends for life. That's where I fell in love with the game. I'd probably say I was more pushed into it as well, as you do as a young kid. My dad wanted me to do judo, which I did to quite a good standard. And then I went into playing sort of rugby league. And we're travelling over to Bingley, Keighley, Birkenshaw, Ovenden, King's Cross, all tough games. And I remember it, that sort of competitive edge and that nastiness from the opposition. And that's where it all began. Big rhino pads on. I don't know if anyone remember. Big pads he put over, scrum cap on, gum shield in, and off I went. And, very lucky that I had really supportive parents. My mum was brilliant as well. She used to take me off. My dad was in the police, so obviously worked shifts, so he couldn't take me all the time. So became friendly with some of the parents and stuff like that. And we had a really good group of people. And that's where it started. And something I look funny, because I played 428 games for the Giants, and I remember a select few. For whatever reason, those memories start to fade a little bit, or they merge into one. You remember bits now and again. But I look back with fondness on my amateur days and remember the lads that I played alongside. And we're talking 30 years ago now. So I'm 40. That's ridiculous, 30 years, but I still remember it. Remember being there, remember the smells, and have that sort of nostalgic feeling towards being a under-10s rugby player at Underbank Rangers.
Fantastic. And, whether it be on holiday or visiting other grounds, how many times has somebody who you played against back then walked up to you and said, hey, I played against you at such and such? Has that ever happened? Does that happen often?
All the time. Yeah, it has done in the past. What gets me now is something totally different. I started coaching a little bit later on in my career, so about 20-year-old, just doing a little bit of coaching at a local team, helping them out. Did it for about 4 or 5 years. And these lads were 12 years old. So we're talking still 20 years ago. Yeah. It's them now that come up to me. And the 30-year-old, I had a lad come up to me who'd been in the Marines for 6 years and left the Marines. And I coached him at 12. It just blew my mind. I was like, sorry, what? You've been in the Marines? Oh, yeah, I went in the Marines for 6 years and I've left now and I've come out and I'm doing something else. And he was in his 30s. Like, what the hell happened? Where did
You're getting old. You're getting old.
Grey hairs in here somewhere. Sure of it.
At least you've got your hair, mate. That's half the battle. Yeah, but I mean, how did Huddersfield find you? How did that all come about?
So I started playing for a rugby union team at the same time as a rugby league team at Huddersfield YMCA, which is Lawnde Hill. And that's where our reserves play now. Actually, Ken Davies got that. It's a great community place. But I started playing rugby union for Yorkshire at 15 up there. Played for the Rugby League Open Age team, which, again, is daft to me. We were playing in the Holiday Cup semi-finals. I was 15 years old. Probably shouldn't have been playing, to be honest. Against grown men, which was quite tough. But I enjoyed being around it, and I loved that experience. And at the same time, Huddersfield Giants academy training up there, and Brian Blacker, who I work alongside now, is the commercial manager of the Huddersfield Giants, and I work alongside him. He was coaching, so I was up there watching them, speaking to Brian, and they sent down a Great Britain player, Paul Dixon, down to watch me at Lockwood Park in the Holiday Cup final. Scored the first try of the game in centre because I was a little bit slimmer at that point and leaner and younger. And I scored a little kick through the back. I still remember it. Pounced onto it, dived over in the corner, celebrated like a superstar as you do, and we were off. Anyway, we lost. I think it was 46-6. But I scored the first try of the game, so it was for me. It was a memorable occasion. Ironically, against Underbank Rangers, and I did enough to get noticed. Paul Dixon invited me up to go training. I was still only 15, so I couldn't play academy at that time. So I trained for a while until the point of being able to play. And then as soon as I turned 16, I was allowed to play for the Giants Academy team. So that was my first experience. And kicked on from there. A year later, signed my first ever contract.
Absolutely. I believe that was on, and I read somewhere, was that on your birthday? Actually, on your birthday you signed
my 18th birthday, yeah.
18th birthday.
And, no, 17. Sorry, 17.
Yeah, 17.
I made my debut at 18. Sorry, I apologize.
That's right. And, at that time, would you believe you'd have gone on to have made the amount of appearances in that first team as you did?
Not in the slightest. I'll be honest with you. I was 17-year-old, and I look now at 17-year-old kids and think, how the heck did I do it? Like, what was going through my head at that point? Bear in mind, I think people have developed a lot more. I think they're more mature now as 17, 18-year-olds than we were, 20 years ago, because we didn't have social media. I didn't have a phone at that point or anything. Phones were just starting to sort of come out there, but they just literally had numbers. Yeah. And that was it. So it was a different world. Like, society's moved on so quick in that sort of time. It's actually sort of mind-boggling for me personally. I was a 17-year-old kid, didn't really know anything, just come out of school, started training with the Giants. I was thrown into the deep end, signed on my 17th birthday, went down to training with John Keir, I think was the coach.
Yeah,
John Keir. And they had players like Dale Lawton down there, who was a seasoned Great Britain international. I was 17-year-old lads being put in my place by like these big internationals or ex-internationals who were in the 30s or late 20s, early 30s. And I was just thrown into it. It was actually quite intimidating, quite scary. And it took me a long time because I wouldn't have said I'm not now, but a bit more introvert then. I just didn't know where I fitted in. I really it was quite scary. So I just put my head down, just carried on, and got put on my backside a few times by some of the players, but I just kept getting up, just kept moving forward. And fortunately, eventually over time, I just found my place.
What comes around goes around. I'm sure there's other young Huddersfield Giants players who would say the same about Eorl Crabtree in training. To be fair, your debut came against London. Round 5 in 2001, a defeat 43 points to 12. In that team that day, a couple of well-known names: Graham Appo, Paul Rowley, Steve McNamara were with you on that day. You played another 3 games that season. You also played Warrington, Castleford, and Hull FC, I believe, in that year. But here's an interesting one. I spoke to Paul Rowley, and he said that was one of the most, even though Huddersfield were relegated in that season, he said it was probably one of his favourite seasons as a player. He said there was something about that team and that group of men that year that even though you went on some horrible losing streaks and, of course, were relegated, he holds it very fondly in his heart. What's your view of that season, your debut season?
For me, the debut season, I was very, very fortunate to be able to play a few games, and that was Tony Smith putting some faith into me as a young kid, as an 18-year-old lad. I believe he didn't put me in probably because I was particularly good enough, as in he saw the potential in me. And he knew what was happening, and the next season would be relegated. But there were some great players, and I've always got on with Paul Rowley, great guy, great man. There's some quality players in there and good lads. But I do believe that group of individuals wanted to be around each other and enjoyed each other's company, regardless of results. And I can only talk from my experience. When we got relegated the next year, I look on that year as fondly as any other year I played, and that was the division below coming up. That group of players we had then were unreal, like best mates, out all the time enjoying ourselves. But I don't mean just having beers, although it was a little bit different. We probably drunk a little bit more then. But winning week in, week out. Tony Smith made us do our own reviews, look at your own, because we didn't have the analysis available that we do now. So we had to go through videos and we judge each other on our carries and how many meters you made on those carries, watching your own video. What did you think of that tackle? Did you win that tackle? And we do it as groups, but it brought us all together. It was absolutely fantastic how we played alongside each other, but loved each other's company. We had such a great group of people. And I would say, I don't remember another year where I enjoyed the year as much as I did that year. There's training kit, for instance, you could wear whatever you wanted because we didn't have actually like a proper training manufacturer that give us enough training kit. So you wore whatever you wanted to train in. It was stuff like that, little things. Lads rocking up in, not daft stuff, but stuff you wouldn't normally associate with being in a professional rugby league team. All that just created this great atmosphere and a great, what I'd say is a great culture, not based on professionalism as such, but doing things that galvanised you as a team, and it worked.
Well, all I would say is there's a lot of Earl's teammates that are still scarred by that pink leotard that you wore that day, but we won't go there. Anyway, that season down in the second. I mean, look, a lot of the In Conversation guests, they actually got loaned out into the second tier to get some experience. You didn't need to do that because your own team had gone down into and for those who aren't students of the game, this will surprise some people. People who only saw you at the back end of your career, you played predominantly centre that season. And here's one for you: 23 tries in 30 appearances. Mr. Crabtree, try scorer, with his first two coming against Sheffield in the same game. Yeah, I mean, what was that like? I mean, talk to us about that because, of course, I think the following season you moved to the front row. You went second row the year after when you come back to Super League. Talk us through that transition from a young lad who's coming in as a centre and then going through second row into prop. How did you find that series of your career going through those positions?
Awful, to be honest with you. I played at centres and I wasn't meant to play at centre though. That was the thing. We were meant to be getting a centre in.
Right.
And it was only in the friendlies that Tony Smith said, look, we haven't got anybody to play centre for this game, but we're looking at getting somebody in. So can you just play centre in? I think it might be like Keithley or something. Anyway, I scored a couple of tries. I had Effin O'Hare on my wing as well. He was top try scorer that year. So just think of how many assists I must have given him as well. So right up there. But he put me in against Keithley, whoever it was, and I scored a couple of tries, did all right in the friendly. When yeah, well done. We're still looking to get somebody in. And then it went into the next friendly and they didn't get anyone in, so he played me there again. And then it went to sort of like the start of the season and they're like, we're not getting anybody in. This is where we're at. You're going to play centre. So I was resigned to playing centre, which was not what I expected at all. And I had one of the best years of my life. I mean, genuinely, 19 years old I was as well at this point. I wasn't on a lot of money neither. So it was quite nice that we were getting a winning bonus every week of 250 quid. So we didn't lose a game all season, apart from the Challenge Cup, but we drew one against Whitehaven. And what a year it was. Scored 23 tries and Effin scored like about 30 odd or something like that. And he was my win. So everything was just coming down our side. We had little special players. I think we called one Big Daddy, where it was a tap that came back to me and I tip it on and look for an offload to F. It were absolutely sensational. I had some mates for life. Paul Riley, who was one of the toughest blokes you'll ever meet in your life. We were all good family friends and stuff like that. We just had this great camaraderie between us all and as families and kids. And I look back on that as probably one of my fondest years. After that, I struggled. I was taken out of centre. I wasn't good enough to play sort of Super League. The gulf in difference then and class was totally different. Not like it is now, because there weren't as many Super League or ex-Super League players playing that division. Not like these, like Wakefield are incredible at the moment. Yeah. So stepping up was a massive step up. So at that point, I was 20-year-old. And like I said, walking out against Bradford Bulls when we've got like, these huge, tough players as a kid, was quite intimidating playing Wigan at the same time. And these teams with St Helens were just far away and above anybody else, and no one could touch them. So I went into the back row. I remember one of the first games I ran at Wayne McDonald's and Dave Thurner. And Dave Thurner, legend of the game, Wayne McDonald, 6'7", beast of a bloke. And I just got put on my backside. Bang, straight on my backside. I came off the field, absolutely gutted, probably got subbed or whatever. I just couldn't, I didn't know what to do. It weren't what I did before, where you could walk through people, weren't working in this division. And I got dropped over time. I just couldn't make my way. I was just not tough enough, not big enough, not mentally strong enough. And I went through a really, really tough period of not playing well. Just couldn't find the groove, couldn't get into it. The coaching staff lost faith in me as well, which was look back on that as a really tough time in my career and something that should have been dealt with totally different, but it wasn't. So unfortunately, I had to ride that storm. And luckily, some of the coaching staff left over time. And eventually, different coaching staff came in, put their arm around me, and wanted to help me a little bit more. And I started getting mentally more mature, bigger. So I'm a big guy anyway, but I was always like a slow developer, a late developer in life, as in the sense that I started putting size on and strength later on in my mid-20s. And this is the problem when you lose kids at 18, 19-year-olds, is that they've still got so much more development to do. And I was one of these kids. They were looking to get rid of me to a rugby union team as well. I think like a lower division rugby union team. Luckily, a couple of coaches, John Sharp, showed faith in me. And then Nathan Brown, total different level. Once he came in, the game totally changed. And I've got him to thank for that. Greg Brown is conditioner at the Giants now, getting me in some really good shape. And that were it. Kicked on, moved to second row, and then size on again and moved to the front row and never looked back.
Yeah, interesting there. I mean, so you touched on it. Really difficult time for you, not just as a rugby league player, but more than likely as a man. You know, these are tough times. So, you know, just talk to us a bit about that. What in those times of doubt, imposter syndrome, whatever you want to call it. You know, walk us through how did you cope in those times? What did you have to do to keep yourself moving forward?
I'll be honest with you. Yeah, I had imposter syndrome. It's something I'm quite open about as well. I didn't feel like I belonged there, and I felt like when I played at England, to be honest. And I think that was to do with the environment as much as anything else. There was a few clicks at those points, and coaching staff made it quite clear there was favourites. And it's the same as playing just like club level. There's favourites, and some coaches will look at certain players and they'll want them in the team. And unfortunately, coaches make or break rugby league players' careers. Obviously, you have a say in that yourself as a player.
Yeah.
There's a bit more support for me. I didn't feel like I had any support whatsoever. And this is just me being open and honest. I didn't feel like I could speak to my parents about it because they just didn't understand it. They're total different backgrounds. They didn't get the professionalism. My dad was a tough copper, CID, and he's not the most emotionally intelligent person like that. He's not someone you speak to. I didn't really have the friends to be able to speak to them. So none of my mates were in sports or anything like that. I had nowhere to go. So I have what I'd consider a really good internal monologue. I speak to myself and I justify things and process things myself. It takes time. But at that point, I was in a horrible, horrible place. Didn't want to play rugby league. Just wasn't happy. I didn't want to come to training. I hated being there and just didn't feel like I was wanted. And the only reason that changed is because the staffing changed. I just kept my head down. The good thing what I did do is I just kept going. I just kept walking forward, kept moving forward, even every time all the hard hits I were getting, as in whether it be mentally, emotionally, physically, I just kept getting back up and just kept going forward because I knew that's what I had to do. And that got recognised. It wasn't recognised by the coaching staff at that time. It was recognised by the next coaching staff who probably had something bad said to them about me, which I know they did. And he started to realise, that was John Sharp, that actually I worked hard. I just kept going. And I did everything I was told to do, never did anything wrong, never in trouble, never caused any issues for anybody. I just kept going. And over time, I started, like I said, it just came with my age and being physically more developed. Started to become a man. And when I did that, things became easier for me. From being at the back of training, I started moving up gradually. And then eventually I was at the front of training, leading. around the pitch, leading around the running track. And then that was that then. I became a little bit more unstoppable in the sense that I could be what I wanted to be then. And the coaches already had my backs at that point. So, yeah, it was a very, very tough period, but could have quite easily just given in, just not carried on with it.
Obviously, personal, perseverance is there. I mean, you talk there about John Sharp and then, of course, Nathan Brown. Do you ever look back and think, had it not been for them, where your life would have gone?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Yeah.
Where do you think that could have? Where would you have gone had that not have happened?
So I was contemplating going into the police, just following my dad's footsteps, which I was quite glad I didn't do to a certain degree. Do a great job, but I think times changed a little bit as well now. But for me, I was going to probably go to a rugby union team and play some sort of amateur rugby union, maybe start fresh, and maybe it would have been a good thing. You don't know how things are going to pan out. I could have gone on and been successful elsewhere, which later on in life, I got a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I stuck because I'm loyal. I wanted to be at Huddersfield. That's all I ever wanted to do. And luckily, they showed the faith back in me later on. And the coaching staff did. That helped me kick on to another level. And I repaid the favour as well.
Oh, and you continue to do so. I mean, you mentioned, I think, Jermaine McGilvey. We need more people like Jermaine in the game. I think everybody watching this now is thinking we need more Earls in the game as well. So well done to you, mate, for that one. I mean, John Sharp, clearly, and Nathan Brown, by the sounds of it, hold a very firm place in your heart, in terms of what they've done for you. Because, let's be fair, I presume they've changed your life, haven't they, really, by that faith?
Yeah, I think John Sharp gave me the first sort of stepping stone to move on, but he moved on fairly quickly as I started when he was giving me another opportunity. It was Nathan Brown that came in, basically. Sat down when we had some really open and honest conversations, and he asked me about me personally, what I'm good at, what I thought I was good at. And those things like I'm pretty quick for a big guy, great offload. That's what I'm doing. Big strength is I'm a big guy, can bounce people off and offload and create havoc. And he said, okay, so that's what you're good at. So that's your strengths. What's your weaknesses? It's a bit slow off the ground. So that's my biggest weakness. My fitness was getting better at that point. So just getting off the ground, it's a long way for me. I'm 6'6". It's a long way down and back up. A lot of weight to carry as well. Some fatigue, sometimes getting up at the ruck a little bit slow. Says, right, so we'll focus on your strengths, we'll work on your weaknesses. Perfect. So in training, we set up and devised drills which will benefit me personally. I did that with everybody. And I got better, I got more confident. And when I was running in, he was sending people to offload, like Luke Robinson around the back and Scott Griggs steaming through. We do little turn-up plays, and I've seen some videos recently of us doing those plays and it working in games. Nathan Brown was a little bit ahead of the game at that point. The structures he had were totally different to like Tony Smith. Yeah. He was like the new era of coach. And it was a bit of ahead of the game, and we were doing all these plays, and it was working for us. But tell you what a bloke he was. Came in. Again, we'll talk about galvanising teams. And I'll tell you this one where we went to a training camp in Bath. All the team went to this training camp in Bath. Got down there thinking we were going to get absolutely flogged. We went down to this training field and he goes, right then, lads, do a bit of kick tennis to warm up. Then we'll get into it. So we're all a bit nervous at this point. Oh, God, here we go. It's on now, like full contact, whatever it might be. Did this game of kick tennis, warmed up, bit of touch and pass. Goes, right, lads, you've got 5 yardage sets, 5 good ball sets, and then we're all off out. And I was like, what? He goes, yep, 5 yardage off your own line, 5 attacking sets, done. This took probably 20 minutes. Right, lads, back to the hotel, let's get ready, we're all off out. So we did, we all went back, got changed, went out. And I'm speaking to 2 of my best mates, which is Andy Raleigh and Paul Jackson. And Brownie comes over and that shot girl comes over with tray shots. And I'm like, head coach is here. No, you're all right. And he went, nah, bring it over. We'll have the lot. And bought a tray of shots, and a couple of other players came over. And what he'd done is just created straight away that we're all in this together. I've got your backs. I want you to enjoy yourselves, but at the same time, for the back of that, you work hard for me. And that for me meant so much because I'd run through brick walls for that guy because I knew he had my back and in return, I'll give him exactly what he wants me to do. And I did that. And I think that's massively important. I think it's important in the game now more so than ever, is where you have to understand individuals, understand the players that you've got, because we all have different personalities, and get the best out of them. And for me, it really did that, and it was quite nice to have that understanding.
So on that topic then, because again I roll with the punches. How do you get the best out of Jake Connor? Because quite frankly, at this moment in time, Earl, he is. I think he's a detriment to your club. I can say that. I don't know if you can, but I just think at the moment he's not turning up for his teammates. And what I'm seeing as well is I think his teammates look a bit fed up with him. I also noticed against the Warrington that when he went off, he was trying to talk to some of the coaching staff, and they were having none of it. I mean, great talent on his day, genius. What's going on there, and how do you see it? Because people will want to know your view on that.
Yeah, you know, it's everyone's going to have a different view on this as well. And I'm going to say straight away, I will not slag any player off. I'd never ever do that. So I'm not going to be cutthroat on Jake. I think there's not so much these issues with the way that Jake's actually delivering himself in games, and this biting back at people at the weekend. He got a yellow card. He was not punched, but someone went for him on the floor in the first place. He retaliated to that. Unfortunately, Jake Connor has done what Danny Brough did, is where you keep going back at the referees, and this is where bias comes in. It shouldn't come into sports, but referees' bias comes in as well, where they think, you know what, you're a bit of a pain in the backside, you. Just because you're turning around and throwing your arms up, I'm not going to give you anything. And I don't think they're not saying they do this on purpose, but then Jake's reaction then is to just strike out himself. Now, I think fundamentally there's a bigger issue here. Jake Connor at that situation shouldn't have done what he's done. But that team at the moment is not performing the way it should be. Now, Jake is a part of this and he's a part of that issue, but I think there's more issues within the team where they're giving up. And when Jake does something like that, then they all start going off in directions and things like that. But what's happening is things are happening all over the field, including what Jake's doing, and it's totally dismantling the team. The team are just not even looking at each other, and that is the biggest issue for me. Jake needs to cut out that stuff, and I'm sure they'll have words with him because he is a very, very talented player, but needs to cut out. If you're going to wind people up, you can't get wound up yourself. That's the battle. The emotional battle there is to wind somebody else up so they make the errors, not you get wound up, because he isn't having things going his way. He's getting wound up and getting brought into this fight that he doesn't need to be into. So anyway, I think fundamentally there's more issues than Jake Connor. I think he can sort himself out, but there's more to it.
So you're talking there about how Nathan Brown brought you all together. I mean, do you feel at the moment there needs to be that? At the moment, it's fragmenting maybe a little bit, and they need to understand that they're all in it together.
Yeah, it's definitely fragmented because you can see by people's body language when they make mistakes and things like that. That comes with a little bit of confidence and belief in yourself. I think there's a definite lack of belief, and I think we're too easily broken down with that lack of belief. At the weekend, scored a couple of tries, and you could just see, here we go. And I've been a part of that as well. It's not because they're not trying hard. I can assure you of that. Every player tries hard. It's not because they're not turning up. It's because they're probably doing a few different things. When you're playing against a team like Sam Burgess's, Warrington, that are there on fire, everything's going well. They just look so comfortable. We are not. We're a mile off at the moment. It's something fundamentally that's got to change within the team, whether it's mentality or the things that we're doing within our structures. It's not working at the moment. They've had some good games. We play some good teams. You can make all the excuses you want in the world. The players are there. I'll be honest with you. I do believe the talent is there, but at the moment, there's fundamentally something that's not quite working. You need to work out what that is to bring them together and get them to play for one another. And I think Jake doing what he does just doesn't help the situation. He needs to snap out of that and get back to being a team player, but he needs to be a leader, does Jake. If he wants to be the standout guy, which he ultimately wants to be because he's got that sort of ego to him, he needs to be a leader, not somebody that leads in a negative way, because as soon as he does that, he drags people down with him. And sort of curates this diversity in the group where they all want to go in their own directions. And so, yeah, it's concerning, but I don't believe it's down to lack of talent or players or effort. I believe it's just down to something else, which just isn't bringing them together and uniting them and losing that confidence really quickly.
You mentioned when you talked about Sam Tompkins. I mean, Sam was a master of the art. You know what Jake's trying to do. Sam Tompkins was a master of the art in terms of refereeing and trying to put things in referees' minds. Let's put it that way. But what Sam Tompkins could do was focus after. And I think what we're seeing with Jake is that he gets consumed in all of that to the point where he then can't focus. I mean, a perfect example, the Danny Walker try at the weekend. Where, let's be fair, he's done, isn't he? He does it on the line. And that's that focus element of it. Sam Tompkins could do the grubby, nitty-gritty stuff with the ref and wind people up, but he focused. Jake's just not doing that part, is he?
Yeah, that's a disappointing one with the Walker one on the line, simply because that's his man. The problem is when you're a fullback and you're in the line, you need to get out the line as quickly as you can to cover on the back.
Yeah.
So Jake's, it's not like he's lost his head. That's totally irrelevant to just getting into a fight or just losing the plot. He's thinking about the next play, which is trying to get out there as quickly as possible instead of focusing on what's happening at the net. What's happening in front
Absolutely,
of him.
yeah.
So what is at the ruck there? He's a defender, which is on the line essentially. That's his man until that ball goes. Jake's already thinking about leaving the line to get out the back to cover around the back. Yeah. And unfortunately got caught out. He needs to go for that man first. As soon as the ball goes, he can get out of there. But he's trying to get out of there quickly. That has got nothing to do with Jake getting caught up in other situations because.
But isn't it concentration though, Earl? I mean, what I mean by that is, it's concentration is what I'm saying. So in that moment, as you say, he's the A man. So his concentration has got to be focused until the pass goes. And for whatever reason, and probably for all the right reasons, he's thinking I've got to go and cover. But it's those in professional sport, those are the seconds, aren't they, that matter, and it's making the right calls.
Well, I think fundamentally across the whole of the team that's happening. Because this isn't, if you watch the Giants week in, week out, this isn't the first time. It might be Jake this week, it might be somebody else the week after. You've got to control the ruck first. That's the first priority. The ball's there. Even if it goes wide and you don't quite get there, at least they've scored on the edge. Because that makes the kick hard. You cannot let them come through the middle of the field. You can't do that. And that is what we'd have always said was a very, very soft drive. You can't concede those, not in semi-finals especially, around the ruck. And to me, there's too many soft tries. They were well-worked tries from the middle of the field and when they're doing their shift options, but they shouldn't be getting in those positions where they can just shift across the field and break it down that easy. Now, I just think that might be just a little bit of spacing, things like that. People caught out in the wrong positions or focusing too much on the ball. When you're playing elite teams, when they're playing really quickly and they've got that skill level, they're drawing you in and passing it at the right time. I just think we're a little bit off the pace at the moment in that regard, working as a team and working as a unit to break that down.
Fair enough. One thing, though, that has worked really well is your left edge. I mean, how impressed have you been with Masters and Swift's combination? I mean, Swifty, what a pickup he's been for the Giants. It's a shame he's going to be out for a bit, but what a player Adam Swift has been this year for the Giants.
I'll be honest, Swifty's been head and shoulders above. Easton Masters is not far off as well. He's having a lot better year this year. He can create something, got an offload in as well, which I always love to see. Easton's a bit of a strange one because last year, he had a bad year. You'd say it didn't quite work for him, but he was being moved around the pitch all over the place. Couldn't get a chance to settle. It shows what a settled player can do with a winger that's absolute quality. That must fill Easton with so much confidence that he's got that player outside of him as well. And I think Easton stepped up. He's a lot better this season than what he was. He seems to be carrying a lot better. He looks more dangerous. But when you got Adam Swift, even his one-out carries off his own line are really good. He's just a smart player. You can see he's thinking all the time, looking for the right spaces. And somehow we need to apply that to some of the other players in the team where they learn how to be able to do that. It's a skill. It isn't fluke. He ain't just running. He's looking all the time to evade people, and he can finish as well. Adam Swift's been absolutely fantastic for us, and I feel sorry for him in a lot of ways that we're not performing the way we should be when you've got people like him and Easton who are standing up standing out quite well. We just need it across the board a little bit more, and probably forwards as well. I'm going to pick on the forwards a little bit. We need to be. I feel like we need to be a bit more direct, a little bit tougher in the decisions we make. Too many errors, and we probably getting dominated a little bit too much around that area.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And you've got the units to do it in the middle. You know, it's got some big lads up there. But no, I mean, Swifty, I mean, he's try scoring runs. He did it all last year. I think he went on something like a 7-8 game try scoring streak. I think he's on something like a 12 now for you this year. Obviously, he missed the game, but that's what he's fault for injury. But when he's played, I think he's on about a 12 game streak. He's just, what a player. I mean, what a player. Adam Swift is incredible. Right. Before we go on to you, God, we could talk all day. It's lovely when you get somebody who loves rugby league. You could just talk for hours, can't you? But we've got to be mindful of time. I just want to touch on probably two great seasons, two brilliant seasons for you while you've been at Huddersfield. And at that time, actually, you know, it was, dare I say, Warrington and Huddersfield were proper at it in that period of your career. Starting at 2009, your trip to Wembley playing Warrington. Obviously, that one sticks in my mind. You know, walking out, whether it be for your country or whether it be for the Huddersfield, certainly Huddersfield, probably, you know, in your heart as it is. What was that like, walking out at Wembley, representing Huddersfield against Warrington in that Champions Cup final?
An experience that is like nothing else. 70-odd thousand people in the stadium, which I don't think we even get that now at Challenge Cup finals, to be honest.
Yeah.
We're very, very fortunate we got that opportunity to play there. The week build up to it as well. It didn't go quite how we wanted. I'll be honest, I thought we had a little bit of misfortune in that game as well. A couple of things went against us, especially Kev Brown doing his knee in the game straight within, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. And that totally changed the team around, which was absolutely gutting because that really did affect us, but it was still a close game. I don't remember too much about it apart from being out there and walking out. And it's all a bit of a blur, to be honest. But to get those sort of opportunities in life and be able to play at that sort of level, the pinnacle of the sport, is incredible. Something I'll be always very, very proud of and privileged to being able to do. And it's always good to watch those finals and may never have won one. That doesn't make me sleep any less at night. It's just nice to have that opportunity. Yeah. I feel very lucky that I got to walk out in one of those big games.
Yeah, absolutely. And from 2009 probably to 2015, you're in and around the playoffs. You know, you got to a couple of semi-finals along the way. And probably your greatest, I don't know, it might not be your greatest achievement, but Huddersfield Giants, 2013 League Leaders Shield winners. That must have been a very, very special, not just for you, but for Ken Davey and everybody associated with Huddersfield, you know, a proper rugby league club. And, you know, you've been knocking on the door for a few seasons. You know, you really were punching in that top four and being really competitive. To get over the line that season and get the league leaders, how special a moment was that for you and the team?
It was an incredible year, that, because of, obviously we're top of the league, but you won quite a lot of games and you beat the big teams as well. And we actually had basically a game to spare, which was quite a nice feeling, knowing that you'd won the league. And for me, that was outstanding. Finishing top of Super League and being a part of that squad. But again, on paper, I was speaking to Bruffy about it the other day. On paper, you probably wouldn't have said we were the best team. And maybe that's why when it came to the playoffs and the crunch time, we just couldn't keep it going. And maybe we overperformed. But we just had a great bunch of guys that wanted to play for each other. And we ground it out for the whole course of the year. The teams we probably shouldn't have beaten, but we're winning by, like 1 and 2 points. We ground out ways to win. I think that's the important thing, finding a way to win, regardless of how scruffy or how pretty it is. Yeah. We did that. We did that for a full year, which is absolutely ridiculous. Look back again at that and think very, very lucky to be able to be a part of something so special. Disappointing thing for me is we let some good players go at the end of that year for various different reasons, and we never recovered from it. And I think once you get to that point of almost being successful, you cannot take away. You need to add and really go for it, and we didn't at that time, and it was a massive shame. And we struggled a little bit then after that, which was a shame because we had a real good opportunity to kick on.
Yeah, no, I think you won a lot of friends during that time. I mean, I've always had a bit of a soft spot for Huddersfield, and one of the things, and again, you know, to win that shield for your loyal fans. I mean, you might not have the biggest following, but you've got an incredibly loyal following at Huddersfield. And we always say on Raw, it's devastating to see Huddersfield Town, the round ball, which is a dire entertainment sport compared to ours. That they can bring in the fans they do for the round ball, but for the oval ball they don't show up. And for me, there's no comparison in terms of entertainment between the two sports. So we nothing to give us. I mean, I know that you've thrown everything at it, and you continue to throw everything at it to increase the attendances. But yeah, your loyal supporters, to give them that League Leaders Shield in 2013, and they're classy as well. I remember when Warrington won it a few years before, and you were the visiting team when we picked the Shield up, and your supporters brought a big flag. Well done, the wire, and that says a lot about your supporters. Not only their loyalty to the club, but also as rugby league people.
We've got some great fans. Unfortunately, we don't have enough of them. But I do believe that's through to a few different variables in the performances of the last few years. We're just so hit and miss. I mean, that makes it very hard to be a supporter at times. I'm a supporter through thick and thin, regardless of what happens. But that's the way I am. I love the sport, you see. So I'll always be a fan of rugby league, regardless of what happens in the sport anyway. But and I think there's a few issues we have. I think fundamentally, the biggest one for me, and this is only me personally, not representing the club or anything like that, is the fact that we're playing a 25,000-seater stadium with average of 3,500, 4,000 season ticket holders. And I just think we lack so much atmosphere by doing that. If only we could have, in my opinion, a smaller stadium, even 10,000. I don't think we need any more than that. And you start to create an atmosphere with the corners filled in and things like that. I believe you create an atmosphere that attracts more people. People want to be around either success or the fear of missing out, FOMO, as it's called.
Yeah.
You don't want to miss out on something special, being around that environment. But when you're in control of your own finances, off the field stuff and fan zones and all these sort of stuff, where you can actually make money off other aspects of the game as well, because we don't make money off so much. We make some off catering, but we're not in control of that side of it, and beer and stuff like that, plus other events that you can put on. Start putting on other events, it attracts different people to the events, and hopefully then attracts them to your games as well. I think we could do so much more with a smaller stadium, but unfortunately, we're not there. Maybe one day in the future, who knows? But I do think that would change things quite significantly, and also then it gives you opportunities with sponsorships and things like that. So there's a lot of things you could do, but we're not in that position, and we keep fighting the fight, and it gets harder and harder.
Right, do you know what you've just said? What we've been saying for years since doing Raw, exactly that. The stadium at Huddersfield is too big, and when you see the likes of Sheffield, and I know that the capacity wouldn't be big enough at Sheffield, but when you see the plans that Sheffield have put forward for their complex, something like that with a 10,000 capacity at Huddersfield, I think revolutionises the club and probably kicks that club onto great heights. I don't think for as long as they say at the John Smiths, you'll keep trying. I know you'll keep trying. But to create that theatre, that event, that FOMO that you're talking about, if you could create that smaller 10,000, yeah, and your supporters would deserve it as well, because, like I say, through thick and thin, it might only be 4,500, 5,000 of them, but my Lord, they are proper loyal fans, aren't they, the Cowbell Army?
They are, and it's hard when your fans just keep getting kicked in the teeth. It's horrible, isn't it? It's just the way it is. You got your Warrington at the weekend, and you get an absolute hiding. And then you come back home, and we haven't won a game at home yet. And but as a fan, this is what you've got to go through, because you're a supporter of the club. That's what you do. But it's tough, and I understand and feel for the fans, because trust me, I'm a fan as well. I want Huddersfield to be successful. That's all I ever played for. But also, I see the bigger picture, and I want other teams to be successful. I want Hull KR to get as many fans as they can and create this great atmosphere. I want Wigan to be successful, keep being as strong as they've always been. I need these. I want Warrington to go on and be successful with Sam Burgess, because we need the game to kick on. Ultimately, if across the board we start bringing more fans in and get more media output and things like that, we'll naturally get fans. And then it's up to us to capitalise on that and actually to increase that in the best way we can possible. So we need the sport to succeed regardless of who's playing in it.
Outstanding. Look, we haven't really God, so much more we could talk about, but time's beating us here.
We'll do it again, mate. We'll
do round. We'll get you back. We'll do. You'll be. I promise you this. Legends 2, the first Legends part 2 will be Eorl Crabtree. I've said it. You can be the first one back next year. Right, let's do your 1 to 13, Earl. Your 1 to 13. These are players that you play with that you know if you could pick them, they'd walk out with you on the field of play. Let's start at fullback. Who's your number 1?
So I might be a little bit different here, if that's okay. So I'll see the teams that everybody puts out, and it is the best players in the world, or known as on paper as the best players in the world. I'm doing it as players I'd want to walk out with. I'd love to walk out with again. Obviously, there's 2 for fullback, but I'm going to obviously choose only one of them, but I'll mention both of them first. First one is Man of Steel, which is Brett Hodgson. Incredible player, great bloke as well. Got on with him hold him in such high regard. But the player I want to walk out with is a good friend of mine, Huddersfield lad, local boy, absolute hooligan of a player, and that is the one and only Paul Riley. Toughest bloke, toughest fullback ever played with, and I think he'd be great in this game now if he had the opportunity of training in the environment that he'd have these days. And I'd have him in my team every single day of the week. I'd put maybe Brett on the bench.
Well, I'll tell you a very brief one. Brett Hodgson, classy bloke. When he was FC coach, he came to the HJ, and I had my son with me. So we're going back a couple of years now. And he was near the dugout, and I took my son over to him, and he was just stood there on his own. It was when I think it was that drab. Remember the drab game at Warrington? He was horrible, probably one of the worst games of rugby league ever. And he was stood there in his own thoughts. And as I walked over near the railing, I just said to my lad, "Right, Aaron, time to meet a legend." And he just looked over at me, and a little smile come on his face, and you think that meant something. That. And he comes over to me, lad, and he went, "I don't know about legend." I went, "No, mate, legend." I said, "Aaron, meet Brett Hodgson. This is the man who got off the floor against Leeds at the Challenge Cup. Should never have played on and got the Lance Todd Trophy." And he was brilliant with me, lad. I mean, what a guy Brett Hodgson is.
Yeah, good to be around as well. Good team man.
Well, I wouldn't know that, but in the brief meetings I've had with him, what a gentleman of a fella. Right, who's your wingers, mate?
There's only number 2, I guess, is the only one I could really the strongest standout is Jermaine McGilvray. He's in your team every single day of the week. Is that guy? Left side's a little bit different, a bit tougher, so I'd put him on right side. I'm going with Dave Hodgson.
Dave Hodgson.
I think over the years we've had some decent wingers. Jermaine stands out a mile above anybody else. I'm only going for Huddersfield lads here. If I played England, there may be some standout players that I could put in, but this is just Huddersfield lads I've played alongside, love playing alongside as well. Dave Hodge, as a youngster especially, was incredible, but ultimate professional. And in fact, he used to say he helped Jermaine McGilvray come through. So he taught him all about the spatial stuff, and Jermaine talks about him as well, and so he was instrumental in helping him progress as a player, so much so that Jermaine then took his place. So
he did too good.
So he backfired somewhat, so I put them both in the team.
That'll mean the world to him. Hey, you're back in. Lovely.
Right, he's helped him through, and then he ended up taking the spot.
What a great story. He did such a good job. He got dropped. Outstanding. Oh, I love that. Who's your centres?
Leroy Kudrow's in my. I'd put him in the right centre. Local legend, great bloke, still going, and we toured in Australia together, and just again a great bloke and professional to be around. Left centre is Paul Fatawira, who was incredible, Kiwi that came over, and another great bloke to be around. And all these players that I'm putting in, quite a lot of them, quite tough blokes as well. Yeah. And for me personally, when he played in a team that was full of these types of players, you found the opposition, you could rip into the opposition, and sometimes they didn't really want to know, which was quite good. And so
I think some of you, if the rest of the team's going this way, I think you could win some games in the tunnel just by staring, just by looking at him. I think you could win a game in the tunnel. Who have you got as your 6 and 7?
6 and 7, I've had to change this around. See, it's quite hard for me because I've got a lot of friends. I know. I keep mentioning a few of them, but my 6 is Danny Brough.
Yeah.
Again, you could have been 6 and 7 are very similar this day and age. I don't think it makes much difference. And then it's who I put at 7. Now, the 7 and hooker are very similar sometimes as well. So 7 is another Giants legend in a slightly different way. Is Brad Drew, who was incredible. So he could have been the 9. So either way, but I put him at 7 because him and Brough, 2 fiery characters, but brilliant to play alongside. And although getting them together at 6 and 7 could be dangerous because anything could happen within the game, probably off the field as well. We'd have a good time anyway, but sensational blokes and unbelievably talented.
So are you putting it 9, Robbo?
Robbo's at 9.
Yeah.
Luke Robinson, toughest bloke. He is the toughest bloke, man. The problem is I've seen these people in different positions, and I don't mean as in fighting, not shooting off the line, but Robbo would tackle absolutely anything in front of him. And I've seen him, and it sounds bad. I've seen him knocked out a few times, quite a lot of times. And this is probably why the game's changed, and for the better in that sense. He just kept getting back up, and he was all over the place. He just kept playing on. And not that I recommend that. He should have gone off the field, but it was different then. You didn't do that. And he just kept going. Smart, elusive, fast. And he's just what a great bloke to be with.
Retained in the game, doing a good job in his coaching capacity.
Yeah, assistant coach at Giants. He's very knowledgeable. He helps me out with my sponsors as well, actually. Funny enough, match sponsors, ball sponsors on game days. He always comes out and speaks to them for me. I do an interview with him, and he's fantastic to listen to because he's so knowledgeable about the game.
Fantastic. You're 8, you're captain. So who's 10?
10, again, I could choose quite a few people, but I've got a couple of very close friends that I love playing alongside. 2 props I will mention. There's quite a few that I could go through. But John Scandalis was quite instrumental in what I did as in my career and helping me come through. But a lad that I'd love to have in my team and be around is Paul Jackson. He's a good personal friend of mine. Again, I think in this game he'd be absolutely suited. He's a Chris Hill style of player. He's almost square. You couldn't get him on his back. Not so much a massive offloader, but he found the ground really well. And I think the way the game's played right now, he'd be better now in this game than he was then. And he was brilliant for us. And he could hit as well. He could hit.
Fair play. Who have you got in your second row?
Right, so I've gone for one player that really stands out as international again, David Failongo, who was hard as nails, good bloke to be around, could hit, could run, good lines. He's, absolutely brilliant.
And the other second row?
I've got a phone call coming through what I need to take.
Oh, dear. Quick one. Second row and loose forward. 2 names. Second
row is Andrew Raleigh, who's a good mate of mine and tall ranger thing. Loose forward, Luke O'Donnell.
We'll catch up on the phone. That's been fantastic. Eorl Crabtree, thank you very much indeed for your time. We'll get you back for Legends too. Eorl, on behalf of everybody for Super League Raw, thank you very much indeed. All the best to you.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you, mate.